Wow, wow, wow. Even this late in the season, there seems to be a few teams still looking to push the envelope and have been accused of cheating by Red Bull nonetheless. And the FIA have stepped in and moved to close off a loophole within the technical regulations regarding the planks on a Formula One car and what these three teams in particular were doing. And what it was, it's essentially this. First of all, let me explain what the planks on the F1 car is very quickly. So with the picture on the screen now, you can see the underside of a Formula One car, the floor, and then this, what I would describe as a wooden looking plank in the dead center of it. Now this is what is there and is used as a safety measure for the drivers, and it's a prescribed 10 millimeters in thickness. And the FIA utilized this as a measuring tool at the end of every session to measure just how much wear has occurred for every single car on the grid. And there can only be a 1 millimeter level of wear. If they go above that threshold, they are banned and kicked out of whatever race or qualifying session this has happened in. But within the technical regulations, the FIA allowed the teams to have 4 skid blocks essentially on their plank, and it was located at certain areas up to the Formula One teams individually to place them. Now, of course, all the teams would place them very close to the 4 sections of the plank the FIA would utilize to measure the wear on the plank. And essentially, these skid blocks, they're a metal and they're quite thick. This is where the issue potentially lays. So within the technical regulations, there is no specification on how thick or thin these skid blocks can be. And this is where Red Bull believes some of these teams were utilizing a grey area within this set of technical regulations, hence why they went to the FIA. So Ferrari, Mercedes and Haas, for whatever reason or whatever it was they were doing something in a grey area. And it's all around these skid blocks, and I believe potentially the thickness of them and allowing them to run their Formula One cars potentially a hell of a lot closer to the floor than other teams, other rivals. And these skid blocks were essentially taking brute force of the car on the ground as they go through the slow, medium and high speed corners of a circuit. And essentially this was negating the kind of organic levels of wear on the plank that would have been there. And so this is why the FIA have come in and closed off this technical loophole that they didn't realize was in there. So yeah, I hope that's explained it to you. That's the overall issue. But before we do that, if you've enjoyed the video thus far, do consider subscribing to the channel and join me in my race to 10,000 subscribers. That's my next goal, and it's something I want to achieve. So if you enjoyed the content and want to be the first to know about secrets within the world of Formula One, such as Mercedes' upgraded suspension introduced in Austria, which I covered a whole 2 weeks before the F1 channel covered it, I might add, subscribe to this channel now. And of course, the benefits from utilizing this would of course come from a lap time gain for all of these teams and any others that were utilizing such a method. Now, what it meant was teams were getting a lap time advantage that they necessarily wouldn't have been able to naturally run because of like bouncing and porpoising as a result of running their cars that low to the ground. Now, with these teams having across the board to remove this metal skid block on their plank, it now will have a consequence of these teams having to raise the ride height of their cars to make sure that they stay within the specified 1 millimeter of wear for their planks across the entirety of a Grand Prix race and of course qualifying, but more importantly to the race. So this in a sense will have a knock-on effect of having a complete shift and change in the dynamics in terms of the pecking order and performances of all of the cars across the final 3 races of the 2024 season here in Las Vegas this weekend, then of course moving next week to Qatar, and then finally in Abu Dhabi. And of course with Ferrari and McLaren in particular being locked in a Constructors' Championship battle. This could have major ramifications for those two outfits. If Ferrari have had to raise the ride height of their car to a degree which is going to have a huge impact on the level of performance they can bring out of their Formula One car, that is going to have a huge impact on what they're able to do at the final 3 races in terms of closing that gap and overtaking McLaren. Now, in terms of a potential number, a figure out there in terms of what this could take off of a car, it goes from half a tenth to a quarter of a second. This change that these teams will have to make, and that is a huge amount. And of course, other teams on the grid haven't been utilizing skid blocks. For example, there's a picture here I can put on the screen right now, which is of McLaren plank. Now you can notice there are no skid blocks on this picture. So it seems McLaren is one of the teams that isn't utilizing this particular grey area within these technical regulations. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the teams and the pecking order, and in particular those 3 teams in the case of Mercedes, Ferrari and Haas, to see whether their performance dips dramatically. And I think the major 2 teams out of those 3 we will get an inkling to see whether this has had a huge impact is going to be Ferrari and of course Haas, because Mercedes have been in a state of no man's land really with their car ever since the summer shutdown and coming back from it. So yeah, that's something to look out for the final 3 races. But yeah, I am going to wrap the video up here, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this very brief understanding of what it is that's been going on and why the FIA have moved so quickly to make amendments to this particular issue. If you've enjoyed the video, do of course leave a like on this video down below. If you're new, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for all future F1 videos. Alright guys, I'll catch you all later in the weekend with some Formula One content.